What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing more on the alien hybrid topic. I've covered alien hybrids a time or two on this channel, and I know it's a subject that many of you either have experiences with, are interested in, or both. In looking for my next topic to cover, I kept coming across hybrids, hybrid programs, seeding programs, but most often in the past few weeks or so, it's been coming more and more to my attention that former abductees, men and women alike, who have been brought into rooms while aboard these crafts seemingly in order to meet their hybrid children. So what I've been coming across lately has been more about that, about them meeting what they think are their kids. As someone who very much believes, especially in recent years, as I come to working with my abilities or getting comfortable in them, and as more and more of those repressed memories of my own abduction surface, I feel like it was only natural I be led here at this time to share all of this with you. Our extraterrestrials, and whatever species there may be, and believe me guys, in the past year alone, I've come across so many. Think the high strangeness videos, right? I mean, we've come across some pretty strange stuff. But mainly the Greys and the Reptilians abducting us and either impregnating the women and then taking the fetus when it's just big enough for them to put it into and grow it out, or until it's ready to be born in their own incubators. There have been witnesses to this as well. Are they doing these reproductive experiments on us only to abduct us later on and introduce us to our own offspring, the hybrid children and or babies? I believe that this is absolutely the case. I came across some information and of course some encounters that I want to share with you all today, and be sure, as always, to let me know what you guys think in the comments below. So grab onto your spacesuits and get ready to meet some creepy bug-eyed kids, because today we are exploring the issue/controversy of the alien hybrids themselves and the alleged hybrid programs. This is not going to be the end with just this video. So let's jump right in. I'll start by talking about the descriptions we always hear of the spaceships people are taken aboard. Whether it be for healings, completely invasive procedures we can't even begin to comprehend, or any number of other things we are taken up into the ships for, the basic description we are given is of a dull and drab, grayish, terribly lit, usually quite large, seemingly sterile hospital room type of environment with overly bearing bright fluorescent lights. However, something that's recently caught my attention is the rooms the abductees who are being introduced to their own hybrid children are brought into, because it's such a stark contrast to the aforementioned normal environment, being the normal environment we're always hearing about. These other environments look very much like rooms in our own human dwellings, and aside from the fact that we have been abducted from our homes and from our human world here, there really doesn't seem to be much difference, at least from what's being reported. Reports of carpeted bedrooms complete with posters on the wall and lava lights that seem to be very much age appropriate to whatever age the child being brought in to meet the abductee is. So, a toy box full of what looked like some bizarre mix of human toys for a toddler-aged hybrid, or the aforementioned posters and lava lights in the rooms of teenaged hybrid kids. It must be so surreal entering into one of these spaces while at the same time knowing full well that you are aboard an interstellar spaceship. This all seems to me to be very possibly some sort of attempt to normalize or possibly even humanize the idea of these hybrids to the abductees. Whatever the case may be, I have to recognize that there could be any number of reasons for this to be occurring in this particular way, meaning it's being forced upon us. And of that, there's definitely no doubt. But is it for us to meet our children, regardless of how they were conceived, so that we can bond with them and so they can get to know their human side a little bit? Or could there be that there's a much more sinister reason, like for us to meet our hybrid children and get comfortable with and used to them in order for us to be more programmed or whatever when the hybrids come and take over our planet and possibly enslave us? So are we, the parents of these hybrids, going to be saved, or are we going to be the first to be obliterated? I mean, so many questions, guys. I feel like, though, that your decision on that will most likely be dependent upon what you already believe about extraterrestrials and why they come to visit us in the first place, or even why they seem so desperate to be making these hybrids. I've done some other videos and I'll link them in the description box below. Are they trying to save their race, or are they trying to make these hybrids who think and function both like they do and like human beings do? Or is it something else altogether? I really don't know. And as usual, I'm not trying to change anyone's minds one way or the other, but just trying to get you thinking about some of these things, because being educated, in my opinion, is our best weapon in case an all-out war blasts out someday. Okay, so what am I talking about here? Because I am once again kind of off on one of my Gemma tangents. Let's bring it back to the hybrids and move forward with this video. Let's get into our first encounter. Jennifer from my home state of New Jersey was in her mid-30s when she started reporting her very vivid recall of personal experiences with hybrids. This could very well be when she started remembering them too, but I'm not sure about that detail, like how these memories came about. Jennifer's memories go all the way back to her childhood years, and there's definite abduction and missing time memories here. Her experiences were based on what we would now call the gray aliens, but she recognized them as a child as little men. She would often have these experiences and interactions when she would visit her grandmother's house, which was also in New Jersey and in a very wooded and rural area of the state. Her grandmother allegedly had some recall of seeing these little men in the woods as well herself. Jennifer's mother is also, according to Jennifer, an abductee from what I understand. This is very relevant to me because it shows the intergenerational aspect to abductions as well. That's not to say all people who are abductees are going to have their children or their parents or someone down the line be abductees, but it does happen more often than not, believe it or not. So Jennifer has this recall of these repressed and possibly even shielded memories, and has had so many other memories brought up through hypnosis as well. One of her many memories stood out to me as far as the relevance of the topic at hand, the hybrids. She claims that in 2009 she was abducted from her home, but that she wasn't brought into a spaceship or anything like that, or at least that's what she originally thought, because it's still pretty hazy. She says it was, quote, like an old military base, but shut down, end quote. This isn't the first time it's been reported that places like these old shutdown bases, even ones from centuries ago, and there's a lot of that specifically in New Jersey, being one of the original 13 colonies, being used as some sort of cover for extraterrestrials to abduct us and not have to bother with bringing us aboard their own ships. Heck, we don't even have to leave the planet anymore, and some of these bases are said to be underground, even underwater. But are these screen memories of these old bases, or are we actually being taken there? From what I've come to understand through my research is that sometimes it's actually happening and other times it's not. Memory implants, guys, terrifying. But Jennifer's experiences took place in this old abandoned base, which may or may not be right here on planet Earth. Her encounter isn't the point here as much as what she saw was, and these little men were most likely actually hybrid children. Her memories were mainly screens though, so I want to focus on what she recalled while undergoing hypnosis. She said the memory was of stepping out of a large black sedan, but in actuality the sedan was a screen and it was actually some sort of UFO. It's a common belief that these screen memories are used mainly to confuse the victim or abductee about what has actually taken place. She describes being very groggy, very disoriented as she was led from the quote-unquote vehicle to an elevator, and three little figures whom she couldn't remember much were guiding her. She simply remembers that they were dwarfish, and nothing else about their mannerism, stature, or physical appearances stood out to her. What happened next, though, was extremely vivid and something she would never forget, it seems, no matter how hard the ETs tried to make her. Jennifer remembers descending in the elevator for an extremely long time and was then taken into a very large room which contained in it 6 hybrid children, all but one male, and tons of toys. Human toys too, as there were regular teddy bears, dolls, and an unusual amount of stuffed toy dogs. The children themselves looked as though they were on death's door. They were remarkably pale, extremely skinny, and had stringy and unhealthy looking bright yellow hair. They had no interest at all in the toys whatsoever. The kids sat all in a row on chairs that were placed up against the far wall facing her. Jennifer was instructed to encourage the children to play with the toys. This apparently was the reason for the whole abduction itself, and it was almost as though there was some sort of sacred charge or mission happening here. Despite this seeming like it's a really super important task, Jennifer claims she was not successful, and the kids seemed to show more interest in her playing with the toys than in wanting to do so themselves, even after she repeatedly tried to encourage them and show them how. As she handed the teddy bears to them, or at least pushed them into the general direction of the children, they remained completely disinterested. Again and again, and I believe this happened telepathically from the beings who let her into the place, but I can't be sure because it's not specified in my source material, she was encouraged to interact with and engage these hybrid kids. After a little while of this, she was told it was time to go and ushered back toward the door. She once again has this screened memory of entering the large vehicle, taking a sort of long ride, and exiting the sedan again. Again, though, this was almost certainly the memory of being in the UFO, haphazardly and eventually ineffectively being covered up in order to, at the very least, confuse the girl about what had really happened. It certainly didn't explain how or why she eventually ended up in a place that seemed to be deeply underground inside of the earth. So, you tell me, was this all a dream or an elaborate tale made up in order to, what? Garner some attention for herself from all of the doubters and skeptics and trolls of the world and bring about all of the unwanted attention she surely had to endure after coming forward? Again, staying true to the topic of hybrids, I would like to switch gears just a little bit. Jennifer could have been, and most likely was, somehow related to those hybrids she was told to help that day. I believe this because her mother and grandmother claim to have also been abducted and to have met hybrid babies and children, but without further information on any of that, I am forced to leave you all hanging and just move on from this encounter. There are people who say that being abducted actually turned them into hybrids, and I want to bring this to your attention while on the subject because, as always, I'm curious to know what you guys think. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not much of a skeptic, but only because of my myriad of experiences throughout my life and people not believing me, not only about personal experiences, but my abilities as well. And I am so very reluctant to ever call anyone a flat out liar, even when what they're saying may ring less than true to me. Not saying this woman is one way or the other either, a liar or an experiencer, but just that I need to hear others' viewpoints. So as always, I'll ask if you'll simply humor me as I retell her story. We're discussing now an encounter I found in the book Strange Intruders by David Weatherly, who I absolutely love. It's about a pair of sisters whose names were changed to protect the anonymity to Justine and Catherine. These two girls were very close from a young age, and maybe closer than most as they had to support each other when things got rough, like when their parents were divorcing at a young age, and many other things that make siblings really come to bond with each other. I bring this tight bond between them up because it's kind of what made things all the more strange when one day, seemingly out of the clear blue sky, Catherine informed Justine that she would not only be leaving, but that they most likely wouldn't be seeing each other or even talking for a really long while. She didn't give a reason, even when pressed by her worried and saddened sister/best friend. Catherine simply left one day and didn't communicate at all with anyone, and for all intents and purposes, it was thought as though she had simply vanished into thin air, leaving no trace of herself or any contact information behind at all. She was gone, blowing in the wind somewhere. As the weeks, months, and then years slowly ticked by, Justine often wondered about her sister and whether or not she was ever going to see her again. Let alone, I'm sure, the fear she must have felt worrying about not only why her sister left the way she did in the first place, but the reasoning behind it, and also, why had no one heard from Catherine in all of this time? After approximately 3 whole years had passed, Catherine surfaced almost as quickly and randomly as she had vanished, calling Justine and explaining nothing more than that she had been living in Colorado the entire time and that she needed her sister to drop everything and come visit her immediately. Of course, Justine went to her sister in Colorado without hesitation and with a lot of questions, I'm sure. Everything went well at first, though, and it was almost as though no time had passed at all. At first. When Justine finally got up the courage to ask her sister about what she had been up to in the previous 3 years she had been gone, Catherine seemed to become visibly agitated and closed herself right up. She refused to talk about it at all. Justine was rightfully concerned, but she decided not to push the issue, and it seems that this was the best thing because the next night, Catherine decided to tell her sister everything she had been so adamant about keeping to herself the night before, so she was ready to spill the tea. She said she had needed time and space to try and work through what she was remembering had been happening to her, allegedly, since they were both small children. Whether or not what happened next to Justine was connected to anything her sister had just confessed to or not is up for debate, but it wasn't long after that she had her own remarkable and quite unbelievable, so some may say, experience of her own that she probably needed to work through after that as well. On the drive home from visiting her sister, Justine stopped at a random gas station along the side of some desolate stretch of desert road somewhere. She recalls the day being clear and the weather beautiful, and as she filled her gas tank, she was lost in her own world of thoughts, mainly about seeing her sister again and what her sister had recently confided in her. So, we have all been to a gas station at one point in our lives. I feel safe saying this. And the island the pumps are on is usually just where they are, and possibly a booth for an attendant, depending on where you live. So, it was quite surprising and somewhat jarring when Justine's thoughts were completely interrupted by a young girl just standing there on the little island where the pumps are next to her car. She described the girl as being young, but strange looking somehow. She was off. She was wearing an old, raggedy, and tattered cream-colored dress and was thin almost to the point where she was all bones and no skin. Her hair was blonde, but to the point of almost looking white, thin and dirty looking, and her eyes were oddly large, like no other human Justine had ever seen before. In fact, her eyes were completely and totally inhuman. They were fully black too, no whites, no sclera or other color in them at all, and this was very scary and shocking for Justine, especially as the odd girl just stood there, staring at her and not saying anything. She also got to thinking it would have been impossible to miss this girl as she stood out like a sore thumb, and also because there was no one else but the store attendant inside. So, where had this chick come from in the first place, and why did it seem as though she simply appeared out of nowhere, right there, in front of Justine's car, simply to stare at her? Also, the girl seemed way too young to just be hanging around by herself, but again, there was no one else there, so that meant she wasn't with parents or guardians at all. Justine doesn't say how young the child was, but either way, she seemed to believe parental overview should have been necessary. There seemed to be no rhyme or reason why a young child should be wandering out in the middle of nowhere like that, not to mention those really super duper creepy eyes she was just glaring at her with. Not wanting to be rude and being a little frightened, Justine simply waved and said hello. All of a sudden, right then, the child finally spoke, staring directly into Justine's eyes and not blinking. She said, quote, "We're halfway there," end quote. For a couple of minutes, the two just stood there in silence as Justine didn't know how to respond to this creepy kid and her seemingly nonsensical statement. Then the child spoke again. Quote, "Your sister Catherine will understand. It's for all of us," end quote. At the mention of her beloved sister, Justine seemed to be jolted back to reality and in her shock started to approach the girl. I'm not sure what she meant to do by getting closer, but as she approached, she said she immediately felt an overwhelming sense of dread, fear, and terror wash over her and the distinct feeling that she should not get any closer. The girl never moved or wavered or blinked, and as Justine started slowly backing away in order to get back into her car and continue on her drive home, and most likely this was mainly due to her terror, the child said again, quote, "We're halfway there," end quote. Justine put aside all pretense and got into her car quickly, looking down as she fumbled with her keys. When she looked back up, the girl was gone and no trace she had ever been there in the first place was left behind. Justine drove off as fast as she could and never looked back. David Weatherly continued about the experience, saying, quote, "She was horrified by her encounter and had to take time to calm herself down before phoning her sister and asking her about the upsetting little girl who had mentioned her by name. Catherine told her point blank that she had seen a hybrid, just like the one she had previously mentioned that weekend. They hadn't discussed hybrids in great detail. Justine had trouble accepting that her sister had been abducted by extraterrestrials, let alone that said extraterrestrials were using abductees in a hybrid breeding program of some description. Although Catherine had hinted that she had experienced something like this violating procedure, but Justine just couldn't bring herself to ask about it. Overall, she says that she doesn't know if the girl she saw was a hybrid, but she knows that she wasn't imagining it," end quote. What do you guys think? Our next encounter is possibly a bit more well known to those of us who research these types of things, and our witness/victim's name is Marissa Luttrell. Marissa was legally blind and had gotten a new roommate to move in with her whose name was Rachel. According to Marissa's mom, Helen, she always thought that Rachel was very, very strange. It didn't matter what the weather was, what time of day or night it was, and whether she was in or outdoors. Helen claimed that Rachel always wore wraparound sunglasses, super thick clothing, and scarves around her head and neck. She wasn't one to pass judgments, and although she thought it was really odd, she chalked it up to the girl being eccentric and nothing more. One day, though, Helen was visiting her daughter at her house when Rachel slipped and nearly fell down. As Helen reached out to catch Rachel and stop her from falling and hurting herself, she claims the girl's arms were, quote, impossibly thin, end quote, and that they felt as though there were no bones in the skin underneath the heavy clothing she was undoubtedly wearing. So it felt like just muscle, I guess, and skin, no bone at all. You know, you grab someone's arm, you can feel their bones. The high strangeness didn't stop there though, because this is all subject to her opinion about how something felt. What she actually saw next when the girl's sunglasses fell off of her face is a whole other terrifying oddity altogether. Helen alleges that Rachel had gigantic avocado green eyes with vertical slits in the middle of them. Rachel tried to play it cool and simply put the glasses back on and said thank you to Helen for breaking her fall. It was too late though, and there was definitely no going back from what Helen had witnessed in that moment. Helen relayed what she had seen to her daughter, and they both confronted Rachel about it. Rachel allegedly responded that the truth was she was from another planet, an alien of sorts from Zeta Reticuli. She was an alien-human hybrid. She further explained that she was doing her best to try and blend in there on Earth and with other humans, and that she chose a legally blind roommate in order to better keep her secret. I mean, she did, after all, have to keep it so no one knew about her, and that was much easier to do when living in such a small space with a roommate who had Marissa's condition. The man she had presented to everyone as her father was actually a man named Colonel Harry Nadian from Masters Air Force Base and was actually her handler. She said she had been to her alien parents' home planet after being raised in Area 51, but chose to return to Earth to live out her life, visiting Zeta Reticuli sometimes. Rachel informed Marissa and Helen that all over the world, human-alien hybrids were being raised and taught how to blend into our society and with us humans. A few weeks after this shocking and bizarre confession, Rachel seemed to vanish without a trace, and in some sort of seeming medical miracle, Marissa regained her eyesight completely. So she had now 20/20 vision after just a week earlier, and for her entire life being legally blind. There is allegedly an entire book based on this encounter with Rachel, and it's called Rachel's Eyes, and it was written by Linda Moulton Howe, and is one I am definitely going to be looking for on Kindle or hopefully Audible very soon. So I definitely want very badly to believe this one, guys, and something deep within me tells me that it's true, but I'll let you all know more after I check out that book. Also, let me know in the comments if you've read this book or if you've heard of any other encounters or anything like this before, because super interesting for sure. However, if this is to be believed though, then isn't it also true that not only are extraterrestrials of all kinds running these hybrid programs and abducting mostly unsuspecting men and women straight from their beds at night, but also that at the very least the United States government, and at most governments all over the world, in military bases everywhere, and most specifically Area 51, are also conducting them, or at least helping with the integration of the hybrids into our human speech societies. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely believe this one as well. There's so much more I've recently come across on hybrids, and this is definitely only the tip of the iceberg, so let me know if you want to hear more in the near future, because I'm starting to look into why they may be doing this. Why are they integrating? How long have they been doing it? Like, to what end? That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you just want to see me smile. Spread the love by sharing this video, and please subscribe if you haven't already. In the description box, you will find links to the other videos I've done on seeding programs, hybrid programs, and I might put the reptilians in there as well, because I think I talk about hybrids with them in that video. Also, links to my books, Missing the Fae Theory and Encounters with Evil, 101 True and Terrifying Stories. The Kindle and paperback version will also be in the description box. If you'd like to donate to the channel, PayPal, Cash App, Patreon, and my Amazon wish list gift link. If you would like a personal intuitive oracle reading from me, the remote readings are half price for the rest of November through to Thanksgiving. That's $20 a pop. So if you want one or anything else you might need, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. Every Wednesday night, come and join me and Ghost Dragons EW, where we stream for a few hours live intuitive oracle. You come in and I'll pull one random card from one random deck and give you a weekly reading for donation only. Also, if you haven't checked me out on the show Disembodied Voices on the Paraflix Network, they do a 1 week free trial. It's Disembodied Voices with Kelly Renee Schutz, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz, and it's season 3, episode 6, and it is a 2-parter, a double episode. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. If nobody's told you today, you're capable, you're worth it, you're beautiful, you're amazing, and you can do anything that you want to do if you believe in yourself. And you know what? I believe in you. You can do it. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.